get started?
Yes. It might take a minute for it to load up, but I'll let you, it's loading right now. So you just wait a second. I think we'll be good to go. All set.
So good morning, everyone. I am Representative Kristen Cloutier. I represent House District 60 in the Maine legislature, and we are here today to receive public comment for the commission to create a paid family and medical leave benefits program for the state of Maine. And so we'll start out with introductions. I've already told you who I am, and I think that my good co-chair, Senator Daughtry, is trying to log on. So I will hand it off to Representative Paul Stearns.
Good morning. My name is Paul Stearns. I live in Guilford. I'm the state representative for 12 towns in the House District 119 in Piscataquis County, as well as the unorganized territories.
Thank you. Senator, I'm sorry, it's Rosen. I'm sorry. Sorry, it's still so early on a Tuesday. I apologize. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Kimberly Rosen, Senate District 8. My Senate district goes from the 16 towns through Castine up to Lincoln. I have the city of Brewer. I live in Bucksport. Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy Estabrook, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. I'm Wendy Estabrook. I'm a director in human resources for LL Bean, and I'm part of the commission representing a large employer in the state of Maine.
Benita, do you want to go next?
Good morning, I'm Benita Usher. I own Smooth Transitions Maine, and I represent the elderly in the state of Maine.
Emily?
Hi, I'm Emily Ingerston. I'm sorry I'm having camera difficulty this morning, but I own Ginger Hill Design and Build, and I'm a small business representative on the commission.
Drew Christopher.
Hey everyone, my name is Drew Christopher Joy. I work at the Southern Maine Workers Center, and I'm here representing workers and self-employed folks. And I do just want to flag that I have a hard stop at noon today. So I hope to catch as much of this as possible.
Great, thank you so much. Commissioner Fortman.
Hi, I'm Laura Fortman. I'm the Commissioner of the Maine Department of Labor and here to provide any technical assistance I can based on experience with social insurance programs.
Thank you. And Sarah.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Bryden. I am here because I have professional expertise in the area of leave of absence and paid leave compliance.
Thank you. And Senator Daughtry, do you want to
close us out? Thank you so much, Rep. Cloutier, for holding down the fort. And I apologize, everyone. For some reason, my computer decided to completely restart and install an update this morning. So glad to actually finally be joining you on my laptop and not on my phone. I am Senator Maddie Daughtry. I'm the Senate co-chair of this commission. I represent Senate District 24, which is the communities of Brunswick, Harpswell, North Yarmouth, Freeport, and Pownell, and excited to be here with everyone. And I think we can jump right in, sort of laying the groundwork to explain how things are going to work this morning. I know that Representative Cloutier and Colleen have sort of gone over a little bit of sort of the base, but for those who are in the waiting room, how it's going to work is we're hoping, we have from 9 to noon marked off. We're going to ask folks to sort of roughly keep their testimony around 5 minutes, just keeping in mind the time and how many people have testified. A reminder for commission members and all those who are joining us today that this is being live streamed. So keep this in mind with your comments. Don't say anything that you wouldn't want to say to your grandmother or you wouldn't want to have recorded in all perpetuity. If you do have any questions or any technical difficulties, we are here to help you. Please put your questions in the chat and we can try to make sure you're sorted as we call people's names. I think that's sort of the best practice that we've seen in other committees is we'll take turns chairing back and forth. And I'll read, a couple of names, say these, 1, 2, 3 are up, just to give you, if you're in the waiting room, that you'll be up soon. I know a lot of folks, because life happens, as you can hear the barking in my background, just to give everyone sort of an idea of what to expect and sort of know that you're in the queue. When you're announced, please introduce yourself and please make sure that you include who you're representing and where you're from, so we can make sure we have that for our information. Additionally, with the chat function, please keep that to sort of technical assistant questions. That's something that's not streamed on the internet, and it's best to sort of keep that for those type of purposes. Before we get started, any questions from the commission before we jump in, or any other time constraints as well?
So I would just let folks know that I have a work commitment from noon to 1:30. So I may jump off during that period of time and then come back if we're still going.
And then Colleen and Anna, anything you'd like to share before we get going?
No, just a reminder to folks as they're brought into the meeting from the waiting room. It may look like they're getting logged off, but just give it a few seconds and you'll appear. So some people, it's a little disconcerting as you're moved over. You might think your computer is frozen. Just a fair warning if folks haven't done this before.
I like to refer to it as the Alice in Wonderland, falling down the rabbit hole. I promise you'll come back on the other side in the Wonderland that is our commission.
And just very quickly, I also have a work conflict at noon, but I will rejoin if I can, if folks are still participating.
Absolutely. And then I think we'll start off. I will chair for the first little bit, and then I'll pass it over to my esteemed co-chair. So if you see us switching places or just taking turns and getting the hang of everything. Oh, and we do have Barbara Crowley, I see joining us. So we'll give her a second to get set up and introduce herself as well. Let's see. Barbara, would you mind introducing yourself if you can hear us?
I can. Hi, I'm Barbara Crowley. Apologies for being late. I'm a leader of the Peter Alfond Endowment Program at Maine General Health, and here somewhat representing children and mothers. Thanks.
Thank you so much. With that, I think, I'm hearing, can the volume somehow be made louder? We can all try to make sure that, if you're in your settings on your computer, make sure that your mic, and I will do a quick check right now and make sure my mic is set up right. But other than that, unfortunately, it is on a computer to computer basis. So that might have to be something, if you can turn it up as high as you can on your laptop, and I will try to make sure that I am speaking loud and clear as well. It's one of the joys of Zoom and technology. So with that, any other questions? Okay, time to get started on the public input portion of our day. So we have the list of folks who registered. So to get started, I'm going to read the first 3 and we will enter folks one at a time. Up first, we have Michelle Carroll Foster. And I should say, please forgive my co-chair and I if we massacre anyone's name, and please let us know the correct way to pronounce your name as well. So up first, we have Michelle Carroll Foster, followed by Poppy Arford, and followed by Abigail O'Connell. And with that, welcome, Michelle.
Good morning.
Morning. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. Senator Daughtry, Representative Cloutier, and members of the commission, good morning. My name is Michelle Carroll Foster, and I am Regional Vice President of State Relations at the American Council for Life Insurers, also known as ACLI. ACLI is based in Washington, D.C., but of course, I'm working remotely from Virginia. ACLI is a national trade association. We have approximately 280 member companies operating in the U.S. as well as abroad. Our members offer life insurance, annuities, retirement plans, long-term care, and disability income insurance, which is relevant to this conversation, reinsurance, dental and vision, and other supplemental benefits. We represent 90% of industry assets, 93% of life insurance premiums, and 98% of annuity considerations in the U.S. So before I begin my remarks, I would like to thank the Commission for addressing such an important issue with such thought and care. I have been on all of the meetings so far, and I must say that they have been done in a manner that is very professional, as well as definitely handled with care and thought. ACLI believes that paid family and medical leave benefits provided through an employer-insurer partnership are vital to the health of the workforce and the financial security of families. As I mentioned, ACLI believes in the laudable goal of this commission. And as such, ACLI, as well as disability insurers, are ready to assist by sharing our deep knowledge of already existing employment-based paid leave benefits, the claims administration process, and by continuing to provide employers with additional options to increase the availability of such important paid leave coverage. This would include whether they need to comply with the minimum statutory requirements or simply to provide additional benefit options to employers who choose to exceed the requirements of any leave laws for their employees. Over the year, Maine has recognized the importance of having disability income insurance and the role that the private disability insurers play. In 2016, the Maine legislature passed LD 1542, which was to increase private disability coverage in the workplace. And the legislation supports opt-out enrollment for disability income coverage. So of course, this issue is not new to Maine, and we look forward to continuing to work with you all as you move forward with deciding which path you all will take in Maine. And quickly, I'll mention at the federal level, the House version of the Build Back Better package includes a public-private partnership. However, it is still or remains to be seen if paid leave will remain in the bill after it makes its way to the Senate. But I mention that because, there are multiple levels of, government, federal, as well as state that are looking at this issue. And at the federal level, they recognize the importance of the public-private partnership. And as I said before, paid family medical leave is an important benefit, and ACLI member companies agree with the goal of the commission, and we're here to help your top of mind planning concerns. And here are just a few things I would like for you to consider. So public-private partnerships offer faster program deployment, allowing the state to design their program, set contribution limits, and define regulations while taking advantage of private insurance's claims administration expertise, as well as infrastructure. I believe that reducing the state startup costs, as PFML programs can be expensive, private insurers will invest in the technology claims administration, call centers, and trained staff, as well as education and community outreach through all their main customers and employees, thus reducing the state startup costs. And we've seen this in, I believe, the 11 states that have moved forward with this. That has definitely been a factor in their decision-making process. And lastly, a private-public partnership will enable employers to include PFML benefits without the possible undue hardships of trying to comply with federal and other state and local employment benefits by asking their employees to file for benefits in multiple places beyond what is only offered in PFML programs. Very quickly, some unintentional consequences no one would want to happen, especially to those most in need, that may occur without a true partnering or building from what already exists, can include employees experiencing coverage gaps. An employer, if current options are eliminated, might be incentivized to choose to discontinue already existing comparable or more robust coverage provided by the private market, which will ultimately disadvantage the employee. As previously mentioned, employees may miss out on additional benefits to which they are eligible. creating an agency to administer one benefit program leaves employees with the complicated task of applying for and coordinating other state, municipal, and or employer provided benefit programs. And this can cause confusion in assessing as well as the coordination of benefit programs. So in closing, ACLI appreciates the opportunity to provide our thoughts on paid family and medical leave programs. ACLI and its member companies are committed to working with this commission, the legislators, and as well as employers in the state to expand and develop innovative private market solutions to provide more working Americans with paid family and medical leave. We look forward to future discussions with the commission, and we welcome the opportunity to answer any questions. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Is it Miss Carol Foster or is it Miss Foster?
It's Miss Foster. That's my way around hyphenation.
I have a similar actual last name, so I feel you on that one.
Yeah. Yes, but I'm Michelle Foster.
Thank you so much for your testimony and for your time this morning. Do I have any questions from the commission at all? None. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, we are supposed to have Representative Poppy Arford, but I am not seeing her in the waiting room. Representative Arford, if you're in the waiting room under a different name, could you please use the reaction button to raise your hand? Okay, not seeing her. We can circle back if she's able to show up. We'll be moving on to Abigail O'Connell. And wait for her to be able to join through the rabbit hole. Good morning, Abigail. And you're on mute.
Hi, okay, sorry. Oh my gosh, I hit join as a panelist and my computer started cycling and I was afraid I was having what you had this morning and that it was going to restart.
Well, you're here with us now, so take a breath. And
having me. Can everyone hear me loud and clear? Great. Hi, I'm so excited to be here today. My name is Abigail O'Connell. I'm senior counsel at Sun Life Financial. We are a large leave administrator and we provide leave benefits to tens of thousands of working Americans. Also, as an employer, we employ over 400 people in the great state of Maine. And we're really excited about the exploration of a PFML program in Maine. And we commend you for the work that you've done, particularly, and I have never seen this in another state, particularly the work you did in looking at your demographics and how unique they are in the state of Maine so that you can plan to provide a leave that is valuable for all working Mainers, including those who may need to take leave to care for a parent. We also commend you in bringing in leaders from Connecticut and Washington to talk about those state programs. Sun Life has been extensively involved in meetings at the state and federal level to support and advocate for the passage of paid family and medical leave. Personally, I understand the connection between not having paid leave and not achieving gender pay equity. So this is an issue that's really near and dear to me and something that I dedicate my career to working towards the passage of paid leave. And obviously we haven't been successful, as the prior speaker noted, at the federal level to date. I don't think we're probably going to be successful this year at the federal level. So state programs are really, really important to bringing paid leave to American workers. Admittedly, we hope that you will provide the opportunity for employers to provide private plans. We think it's really important, especially for employers, to provide more generous plans than the state benefits. Sun Life is actually an example of one of those employers where we provide our employees who have a year or more tenure with 100% wage replacement if they have to go on paid leave under our company paid leave program. And we provide that to all employees. And we actually have a sort of an interesting story of how that program came about. We are a primary employer of lots of people in the states of Massachusetts and in Kansas City, Missouri. And so when Massachusetts paid their paid family and medical leave, we had to take a hard look at ourselves and say, do we want 60% of our employees to have paid leave and 30% of them not to have it at all, to be operating in states that don't have it? And that's when we launched our own program that meets or exceeds all state mandates. And so that's also why we personally see the value of private plans in being innovative and more generous. We also see the value in the employee experience of only having to make one call to request leave under the unpaid FMLA, state leave laws, paid leave laws, and potentially if the employee is out for their own health condition, one call to also include their short-term disability claim filing. So we think it's an easier path for an employee to file leave when their employer uses a private plan. We also think it can aid employers, particularly those who want to be more generous, or those, and I think LL Bean maybe mentioned this on one of their prior task force meetings, those who have employees across state lines who have to comply with several different state requirements. Sometimes it's easier to have a private plan in that situation. So I guess in summary, we're really supportive of your efforts. We're hoping that we can partner with you as your work progresses, and we can hope that we can be a resource to you as an employer and an advocate who has been all over the country meeting with people in California and Colorado and New York on paid leave programs. We hope that we can partner, and even if it's not on a private plan, but perhaps provide you with some expertise or some prior experience in other places for program launches and rollouts. Last comment, I have a coworker named James Slotnick, and he signed up to speak, and we've decided to consolidate our comments, so he won't be speaking. If you want to strike him off the list, save you some time. Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day, everyone. Anyone have any questions?
Thank you so much. And thanks for letting us know on James. Any questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We have Marcella Mainkinen. I'm so sorry, I'm probably getting your last name wrong, but I'm going to promote you to a panelist. After Marcella, we have Sarah Bigney McCabe, and after Sarah, we have Margaret Marchant. So welcome. Is it Marcella or Marcella? Oh, you're on mute.
Marcella.
Marcella, welcome. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Well, my name is Marcella, and I was born and raised here in Maine, up in the Rockland area. This is actually the first time I've ever been asked or thought about this aspect of my life, my work life. So I'm going to be sharing a personal story about working really hard and the cost of that for me. And I've been told that my story is a little intense. So
no worries.
I'm not apologizing, but I'm just saying, like, didn't know any other way to just do it. So,
well, thank you for sharing.
Okay. So when my mom was 22, she had me, and then 13 months later, she had my brother Amos. Her husband came into the marriage already with my 7-year-old stepbrother, who was on the autism spectrum and had mild cerebral palsy. So at 23 years old, my mom had become a parent to 3 children, an 8-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a newborn. And I was in the middle at 13 months. And I was left alone a fair amount to just cry things out. Before we started school, we had experienced a divorce, and in high school, my father's death from a car accident, and then in my 30s, my younger brother's suicide. So then at 37, I both became single and a mother when I gave birth to a beautiful son in August of 2001. I had my birth plan, my midwife, my copy of the book, Attachment Parenting, and I took a connection parenting class with Pam Leo, whose premise is that every child's greatest emotional need is a strong bond with at least one person. As a parent, I wanted most to attune to my son's early need to develop a healthy attachment connection, something that I hadn't gotten. So during this first year, I had to move, but I was able to secure Section 8 and find new housing while continuing to receive support from TANF and food stamps and WIC. That time with my son was so important. But after 12 months, I was told these supports would end if I didn't work. So after a year, I was no longer able to stay home with him. And I made the decision to take an entrepreneurial class at Women Working Community. Later that year, I started my own house cleaning business. I was given a childcare voucher and worked the hours required of me to continue to have this safety net. It wasn't long before I no longer qualified for help. I had several clients and I was on my own, paying for everything. At Women Working Community, I was told the most important determinant of my success would be my reliability. And being a single mother with no safety net and being self-employed, I took that very seriously. I needed the money. I could not miss work, and I didn't. Even if it meant getting up at 4 a.m., driving 4 towns away on a cold, dark December morning to clean a home I'd never seen, bring my infant son, his snack, the DVD, the TV VHS player combination thing, and his videos. I've been self-employed and cleaned homes successfully for over 20 years and never had a paid vacation or a sick day. And for a time prior to Medicaid expansion, I had no health insurance. I'm really proud of my cleaning business, most especially the trust I built and the quality and consistency of my cleaning, as well as my disposition. I've been described as having integrity and great energy. And it was very painful, even numbing at times, and entirely exhausting. From little stuff like cracking and bleeding fingers to not being able to walk, from back and knee injuries caused by all the cleaning. My son is a teenager decided to go live with his dad when I pushed him out of the car at 6:45 a.m. on State Street to get to a physical therapy appointment on time. If I was late, they would cancel. And if the appointment was canceled due to lateness, insurance wouldn't cover it. And I needed to pay cash that I didn't have if that happened. When he moved out, I struggled even more with major depression and felt suicidal from a combination of exhaustion and accumulated unresolved traumas. In February of 2020, I donated a kidney so I could rest and have some compensated vacation. I needed a break, and it was the only way I could think of to get some rest without facing financial consequences. All workers, not just the ones with work benefits, need time off to rest and to heal. Yeah, it does cost money. There are costs to help, but the costs not to help are greater. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. And just for everyone listening, a lot of these stories I recognize are deeply personal. So I do want to thank everyone who's here today and understand that we are very here and present with you and really grateful that everyone is willing to be here in this process. So thank you for sharing your own personal experience, and sorry for everything you've been through. Do I have any questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for sharing your story. And I hope you get some time to rest as well.
Thank you.
Next, I have Sarah Bigney McCabe, followed by Margaret Marchand, followed by Isadora Foreman. And promote Sarah. And Sarah should be rejoining us. And there she is. Welcome, Sarah. The floor is yours if you can hear us.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having us today. I'm going to see if Sam can hang or if his dad's going to have to scoop him up. But my name is Sarah Bigney McCabe, and this is Sam. We live in Skowhegan. And when I saw that this hearing was happening, I knew we had to hop on if we could make it work in between nap times. So thanks for taking our comments. Just pull up my notes real quick. I apologize. I'm not incredibly well prepared, but I have a 5-month-old and I'm working. And so spare time is pretty much non-existent right now. I've always supported the concept of paid family leave, but since I had Sam, I now see how incredibly important it is. And honestly, how horrible the lack of paid leave is for new parents. Thanks to my union contract, we negotiated 10 weeks of paid leave, and it wasn't nearly enough to meet our basic needs. I spent the first 2 weeks after he was born down at Maine Med dealing with complications. And when we got home, still had a difficult recovery. My heart breaks, and honestly, I get really angry when I think about moms who have even less time than me and are forced to go back to work after just a few weeks, to be taken away from their newborns and to deal with their own recovery. It's horrible. And it's maddening to realize that if I lived another 90 minutes north across the border in Canada, I would have a year of leave. I just don't understand how every other country in the world has figured this out, and we lag so far behind. I'm back to work part-time, and I'm reducing my hours and taking a pay cut so that I can stay home with Sam part of the time, because I truly can't function working full-time right now. I haven't slept more than 4 hours consecutively in nearly 6 months. And those 4-hour stretches I could probably count on one hand. Sam's teething right now and was up every 2 hours for the past 5 nights. Babies are really needy. Breastfeeding takes time to figure out, learning how to sleep, learning how to nap. Everything has such a huge learning curve and takes time. I have to also mention the lack of childcare right now. We don't even have childcare. We're on waiting lists, some of which I put us on as soon as I found out I was pregnant over a year ago. There's no daycare out there. I'm lucky to have had the time at home with Sam compared to some moms who don't have any paid leave, but it is still woefully inadequate across the board. My husband's work does not offer parental leave, but he had accrued vacation and sick time he could take to stay home and help take care of us. And I just really support a universal public plan that covers all workers. I have some other mom friends who couldn't be on today. They all have infants. We have a text thread in the wee hours of the night comparing notes on strategies, and some of them are self-employed or contract workers. There's so many different kinds of workers who really need this. So I hope this will be the time that we can address this issue and move forward and finally make it more fair for new moms. That's all I got to say. Do you have anything to add?
Well, thank you, Sam, and thank you, Sarah. And thank you for taking time out of your morning to be here with us and sharing your story. Do I have any questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. Up next, we have Margaret Marchand, who I hope I am not butchering that name. And following Margaret, we will have Isadora Foreman. And then we do have a few requests on time, so please let us know if you're running against the time wall. I think in the interest of time, we'll have Cara Kirchesney, and I'm sorry, Cara, I always get your last name wrong as well. So just a little bit of switch in the order there. But for now, Margaret, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but we can't see you.
Well, I don't know why. My camera is up. So my husband will come fidget while I get started. Thank you. Thank you very much for having this opportunity for all of us. Right here, Rob.
Oh, there we go. Now we can see. Oh, nope. Now it's gone away. There we go.
Yeah.
Now.
Good morning. Okay, so here we go. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak this morning. This is a really important issue, so thank you all very much. I have a number of thoughts, and the first thing I want to start with is the fact that we all know bad things happen to people. And not only do they happen, but they happen with some regularity. Sometimes there are events that happen to us that are painful and even shocking. There'll be a time when every single one of us will need help. And it's not just enough to recognize this fact, it's long past time to make equitable paid leave policies available to all workers. This means minority and low-income workers, part-time workers, small business workers, per diem workers, they all must be included. Paid leave policies not only help people, they can actually save them and their families. Equitable paid leave can help workers keep their jobs in the midst of a crisis. So here are some examples of some crises. There was the morning my baby daughter stopped breathing. I knew how to apply infant CPR, and I breathed air into her tiny lungs, but it was too late. She died. In shock and reeling, I needed my mom. She arrived, our lifeline. And in just a few hours, thanks to the benefits, her small job at a community hospital, her job at a small community hospital provided, she could be with us. Her ability to give us time helped save our little family. And I really, truly mean that. A paid leave policy saved me. Then there was another time. This time, my sister called. My mother was dead. Help in a few minutes came to my classroom so I could leave, let the tears flow, and begin all the tasks a sudden death in the family entails. My work benefits included a strong bereavement policy. I had time to go, be with my family, grieve, and attend to those hundreds of details. You know, death is messy, and it makes a lot of work for survivors. It takes time. A sibling of mine wasn't so lucky. He only had time for the funeral and then had to head right back to work. His grief had to be saved for another day, but a paid leave policy supported me. Then there was the day it was my first day at a new school and a new job. And it was also the first day my fifth grader had the responsibility to get himself off to school with, fortunately, a neighbor as a backup in case he ran into trouble, and he did. Rushing out the back door to get the school bus, somehow he threw his arm out and his arm went straight through the glass of the storm door, slitting open his arm. There were torrents of blood, tears, EMTs, phone calls, but I could be there with my scared kid in no time, all because of my family benefits for leave. My paid leave policy let me be a comforting mom at a scary time. During this pandemic, more bad things have happened. My sister's dementia deepened. Shutdowns meant her supports, her case manager, her social worker, her neighbors, her church, all disappeared. Even her primary care physician was seldom available. My sister, at 74, with dementia, was left on her own. Retired now, it was my turn to be the lifeline. I brought her food and hot meals, more keys to replace the sets she kept losing. I called the police when she wandered and she got lost, unscrambled her finances, helped her with her medications, tried to protect her from a myriad of scams, sometimes too late. I researched care facilities. Of course, due to COVID-19, all of this work had to be done from 6 feet away, outside. I had to protect my own family. It was not only stressful, it was terrifying. I was afraid for her. I didn't sleep. I lost 10 pounds, but I had no choice. Someone had to take care of her. I was her closest family member. Taking care of my sister had become, and has continued to be, my full-time job. My own life went on hold. The circumstances of COVID-19 made every act of care more difficult. I had to keep her safe and my family at home safe too. I actually shudder, and I mean this realistically, I shudder to think how another family, younger perhaps, with children and all the demands of full-time jobs, could have coped with a similar situation. And yet they have all over our state. People are doing exactly what I was doing. Giving care in the best of times is challenging. It is intense work. It requires energy, compassion, financial resources, organizational skills, good thinking, and most of all, time, lots and lots of time. Horrible events damage families. Paid leave policies can help keep families whole in tough times. The amount of work patients, caregivers, parents, and workers do when there is a medical, financial, legal, school, or child care crisis has grown exponentially. The paperwork is demanding and arrives daily, marked urgent. These papers have timetables and deadlines that can't be ignored. Gone, truly gone, are the days when you could make a call and resolve an issue during your 30-minute lunch hour. Being put on hold can leave a caller stuck in limbo for hours. You don't dare hang up because you finally got so far in the long wait queue that there are only maybe 5 callers ahead of you. How could you quit now? Instead, you wait and you burn adrenaline. Reaching a human being by phone becomes now a major victory. Every crisis task or requirement can take days and days of calls, emails, and frustrating delays to accomplish, sometimes longer. It is a fact that many business offices, including, and I know this from a personal experience and a statement from a state worker, they actually take their phones off the hook during times of high call volume. The pressure is always on, stressing workers who must advocate for themselves or their families. At some point, each of us will need some time away from our own jobs when our own family faces challenging times. Providing leave can not only save a family, it can also keep a trained worker healthy and able to stay on the job. Finally, the pandemic has taught us a lot about how our culture habitually creates inequalities in many of our systems. People of color and low-income workers and earners are routinely left out. Here, right now, with your work, is our opportunity to develop an equitable paid leave policy that includes these workers. All workers must be able to afford to take time off to heal, to tend care, and to advocate. Universal and equitable paid leave is vital for worker success in Maine and vital for their ability to respond to their needs in emergencies and critical periods. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Margaret, for sharing your story. Do you have any questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much.
And we up next are supposed to have Isadora Foreman. I am not seeing Isadora. Isadora, if you're in the waiting room, if you could use the reaction to raise your hand. I am not seeing them. With that, the next person on the list, Jeffrey Young, has let us know that he cannot join us until 10. So Cara, oh, Jeffrey Young.
I think Jeffrey is here. Yeah, I just saw him log on.
We'll have Jeffrey Young and then Cara. And with that, I'm actually going to turn the gavel virtually over to my co-chair, Representative Cloutier. If you'd like to take it off, I'll let Jeffrey in and you can take it away, Representative Cloutier.
Thank you, Senator Daughtry. So Jeffrey, thanks for being here and the floor is yours. We can't hear you. It looks like you're, there we go.
There we go. I was so surprised because I just logged on. Anyway, thank you, Representative Cloutier, members of the commission. My name is Jeffrey Neal Young. I'm the principal in the law firm of Solidarity Law, an executive board member of the National Employment Lawyers Association, and vice president of the Maine Employment Lawyers Association. MELA is the largest organization of civil rights lawyers here in Maine with about 75 member attorneys. We represent employees in labor and employment matters across the state. And I myself have been practicing labor and employment law for about 40 years, the last 33 years here in Maine. Margaret is a tough act to follow, so I'm going to try to keep my remarks short. But MELA supports the enactment of a paid family medical leave bill here in Maine. There is hardly a week that goes by without some individual contacting one of the attorneys in MELA concerned about whether she can take time off for childbirth, and if so, is she going to be paid? Whether someone can stay home, as Margaret was saying, to care for someone who has contracted COVID, whether somebody can take time off for surgical and be paid for a surgical procedure and be paid. Sadly, from the perspective of the MELA attorneys, the answer is always the same. Even if the employee is entitled to take time off under the Maine or federal Family and Medical Leave Acts, she's not entitled to be paid absent some right to do so under a personal services or union contract. And all too often in reality, what that means is that the employee is unable to take time off altogether because of the loss of income. Paid family medical leave, the statistics show that both parents work in about 45.5% of families with children, and about 71% of women with children under 18 are in the workforce. Somewhere between 77 to 81% of American workers lack any paid family leave, and only about 40% are covered by any kind of short-term disability policy. I know that the commission has already heard from various groups with a lot of statistics that I have included in my paper, so I'm not going to bother to repeat them. But I want to say that from the perspective of MELA, there's a few things that any family medical leave bill should contain. First, we believe that the cost should be shared equally by employers and employees. Only 3 jurisdictions require that the cost be placed solely on employees. So the majority of jurisdictions which have enacted family medical leave have had a shared cost provision. And we think it's important to note that paid family leave benefits not just the employee, but it is also something that benefits the employer. Secondly, paid family and medical leave needs to be universal. I think this was a point that Margaret was just making. All workers, regardless of the size of their employer or their status as full or part-time employees, need to be covered by the bill. Third, paid family and medical leave needs to include a comprehensive definition of family. Families come in all sorts and sizes. We need to make sure that the bill covers workers of all gender identities and expressions. Fourth, you need to have an adequate wage replacement for workers. Low-wage workers are not going to be able to access paid family and medical leave unless the wage replacement is adequate for them. Fourth, you need to enact a bill, or the bill should include job protections and prohibit retaliation, because otherwise people are going to be hesitant about taking paid family leave. 6, we would like to see the medical leave administered by the Maine Department of Labor, perhaps the Bureau of Labor Standards, not some private entity which has been talked about from time to time when the bill was being considered. 7th, and this is important to me from the perspective of a private attorney, paid medical and family leave needs to provide for a private right of action. There shouldn't be enforcement left solely to the Maine Department of Labor, much as we respect the work that they do, but sometimes they're overburdened. And finally, and this came up before, but we want to make sure that paid family and medical leave does not supersede the Maine Human Rights Act. That's important because under the Maine Human Rights Act, individuals may be entitled to additional time off beyond paid family leave and entitled to accommodations in that regard. So we want to make sure that whatever number you come up with in terms of the duration of leave, that doesn't mean that an employee can't take additional unpaid leave if it's a reasonable accommodation. Thank you for allowing me to speak this morning, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Are there any questions of the commission members?
I have a question.
Sorry, who was that?
Benita Usher.
Okay, Benita, go ahead, and then we've got Emily and Wendy.
The question is, if you feel that the Bureau is overburdened now, I'm curious why you would want to add more to their work, and why not a private? I'm just curious with that question, since you definitely feel they're overburdened.
That's a good thought. Maybe I didn't express myself clearly enough. When I say overburdened, I don't know that and I would defer to Commissioner Fortman in this regard, who knows a lot more about the burdens, but I don't know about the Bureau of Labor Standards necessarily being overburdened. What I do know, although this may have changed since some investigators have been hired in the last year, is that prior to this past year, there were only, I think, 4 investigators with the Labor Department, which basically meant that they were unable to really look into matters of course, they didn't have jurisdiction over this already, but even to wage an hour and affirmatively conduct audits to make sure that there was compliance with the law. So that's the problem that I'm referring to with the Labor Department. It's not necessarily the Bureau of Labor Standards per se, but it is the lack of ability to conduct affirmative audits to make sure that there's compliance with the law that I think has been a problem because of the lack of investigators. In terms of outsourcing this to a private entity, I think that this is, to my knowledge, although it was discussed in New Hampshire and Vermont, no state has actually delegated or set up private administration. And I think that since this is a state-run program, that it's important for the state to actually administer the program rather than some outsourcing it to some third-party entity. I just think that there'll be more consideration of Maine values if it's done through the Department of Labor and not by some third-party entity. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Emily, did you want to ask your question?
I think I'm all set. It was related to state administration as well.
Great,
Thank you.
thanks. Wendy.
Thank you. I had the same question, so Mr. Young addressed that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So up next, we have Kara Corshane, followed by Lori Clark and Keely Sullivan.
Real quick, Representative Cloutier, Drew Christopher, did you have your hand up?
Oh,
I did, sorry. Jeff, my question was just the part that you just mentioned about the Maine Human Rights Commission was interesting and something that I hadn't thought about. And I'm wondering if you could sort of clarify that now or like send us some writing about how that should be handled from your perspective.
Yeah, I can suggest I'll send some written language, but just to expand a little bit on my remarks, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, an employer is obligated to provide reasonable accommodation for disability, and definition of disability can be broad. It can extend to providing, or at least arguably for someone in the family who's disabled. And so what the law basically says is, putting aside all of the family and medical leave legislation, is that an employer has an obligation to provide a reasonable accommodation to an individual with disability. And reasonable accommodation has been found to include unpaid time off, and that period of time can be extensive depending on, for example, the question is whether extended leave would cause an employer undue hardship. So, if you're BIW or Maine Medical Center or Northern Light, you might be able to allow somebody to take even up to a year off and still be able to return to work. Whereas if and I advocated for universal coverage in terms of, regardless of the size of the employer, if you're mom and pop variety down the street, that kind of a year of extended leave would potentially not apply because it would cause an undue hardship to the corporate or to that business. So what I'm trying to say simply is, I don't know what the right duration that you're going to conclude is appropriate for paid leave, but let's just say, for example, that you decided that, because I think this is in the general range of the other states, somewhere between 16 to 20 weeks. What I'm saying is that after that, whatever period you recommend, that you want to make sure that that the fact that somebody got those number of weeks of paid leave doesn't mean that the employer then doesn't have to consider providing a further accommodation of unpaid leave. And again, then that would depend on whether it would cause the employer an undue hardship. Does that answer your question, Drew Christopher?
Yes, thank you so much.
I'll send the committees some potential wording that could go into any legislation.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much, Drew Christopher. Sorry, I missed you.
No worries.
Commissioner Fortman.
Sorry, I tried not to jump in here and I feel compelled. So I apologize. I think, first of all, Jeff, it's good to see you. To just clarify about the administration, I think that you were kind of conflating a couple of areas. One was the administration of the program, and then you were suggesting that the Bureau of Labor Standards be responsible for enforcement. Is that accurate?
I think I'm showing my ignorance here, and I would defer to you in that regard.
Okay. I just wanted, it's about program design and who administers different pieces. And what I heard was that the Bureau of Labor Standards should be responsible for enforcement, which is a kind of a slightly separate track than the administration of the benefits.
It may be that the enforcement should be left to the Attorney General's office. You know, again, I'll confess that I'm not fully sure of what the relationship is between the two entities, but I do know that the Bureau of Labor Standards, maybe what they really do is administer different statutes as opposed to, again, I'm showing my ignorance here.
No, that's okay. Thank you.
I said I defer to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Young. Any other questions? Not seeing any. We will move on to Kara Corshane, followed by Lori Clark and then Keely Sullivan. So welcome, Kara, and take it away.
Thank you so much. Senator Daughtry, Representative Cloutier, and members of the commission. My name is Kara Corshane, and I am a resident of Lewiston, Maine. I am also a small business owner. We often hear about paid leave as it relates to giving birth or adopting a child and how paid leave allows for parents and a baby to bond. The time I had with my daughter after she was born was less about being able to bond, though of course we did that too. It was frankly all I could do to make it through my maternity leave. I had 3 months of unpaid maternity leave, and throughout those 3 months, I was brutally depressed and anxious. I had pre-existing depression and anxiety and had an absolutely horrendous time breastfeeding. When I was about to throw in the breastfeeding towel, we found out via a terrifying episode that our daughter had some significant allergies. Formula for her kinds of allergies weren't covered by insurance, and it would have cost us $700 to $900 a month to keep her fed. I recommitted to breastfeeding and entirely overhauled how I ate so I could keep our baby fed and safe. I stayed up for hours overnight pumping milk with a hospital grade breast pump, which then I also carried to work. It was very large and heavy and a challenge. It's not an exaggeration to say that I'm not sure that I would have been able to function if I had to leave my daughter and go to work, all while trying to figure out how to manage her health challenges, my health challenges, and the resulting medical appointments. I understand that my story is one of significant privilege. I was lucky that I was salaried and had an understanding employer. I was lucky that we could afford for me to take time unpaid, but we could only do so after months of saving and because my husband's salary is much higher than mine. I was lucky that we had 9 months to plan. I was lucky that I had 9 months to save up sick and vacation time, all while managing a difficult pregnancy. However, as things currently stand, I don't think we would be so lucky. We certainly wouldn't be if there was an emergency. Our finances are far less flexible now that I own a small business, and we have the added and significant costs of raising a child. And of course, as a small business owner, I only get paid as much as I pay myself. Without a statewide program that supports all workers, I wouldn't be able to afford to pay myself for taking leave. But you can also be sure that if I ever get to a point where I have employees, I'll be the first to offer paid leave, even if it means that I don't get paid. I hope we don't need to continue to address challenges like these via individual actions. Maine needs paid family medical leave. It's frankly an embarrassment in the United States that we're doing this in such a piecemeal way. But as you all know, Mainers lead. Mainers help other Mainers. We show up, whether that's helping your neighbor get their car out of a snowbank or making a casserole to give to new parents. And if we have to lead this change, then so be it. Thank you for your time today, and I hope that you support paid leave with elements as outlined by the Maine Paid Leave Coalition. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Does anyone have any questions? Thanks again. Seeing no questions, we will move on to Lori Clark. We also just received notice that Keely Sullivan will not be testifying. So after Lori, we'll move on to Wayne Kennard, and then we'll have Justin DeWalt. So Lori, if you want to unmute yourself and go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you. Morning, commissioners. My name is Lori Clark. I'm the director of the Southern Maine Workers Center, but today I'm here personally to share my story with you about why paid family medical leave is such an important issue for me and my family. I believe that every person deserves care and the tools and policies to meet our highest family responsibilities. No one should have to choose between caring for themselves or a loved one and earning a paycheck. Paid family medical leave is a matter of justice for all Mainers. We need and deserve a robust paid family medical leave policy that is accessible to all workers, inclusive when it comes to defining family, provides a meaningful length of leave and adequate pay. In the summer of 2016, I received a phone call that none of us want to receive. I learned that my sister was terminally ill with ovarian cancer and had 2 to 3 months to live. My former employer did not have a paid family medical leave policy, but I had worked there since 2004 and had accumulated over 60 days of sick and vacation time and was able to use that to go be with her while she was dying. Helping her die with dignity and grace was never part of my plan, but it was a great comfort to both of us to be together during this most difficult time. Her family was there on her last day to say goodbye and to send her off with the love that she needed and deserved. As you can imagine, I used all of my sick and vacation time that I had accrued over the years to be her primary caregiver. I was able to take care of my sister and grieve with my family without worrying about finances. But that paid sick time and vacation time went fast. And when you have someone who is that significant in your life, grieving is like an ocean, and I had to go back to work much too early. And the personal price that I paid for that was very difficult over the last 2 to 3 years. I don't think I've ever really recovered because I never had that time to really grieve and spend the time healing from the most traumatic experience that I had in my lifetime. For many low-income workers without access to paid family medical leave, they will continue to face unnecessary financial hardships. Missing work, as you know, can have a devastating impact on a family budget. Missing a day of work can mean giving up spending money on fruit and vegetables for your family. A whole week can amount to a month's rent or a mortgage payment. At some point in our working years, most Mainers will need to take time away from work when faced with a serious health issue or the illness of a close family member or friend. No one should have to choose between a paycheck and caring for a sick family member or a loved one or their own health condition. Yet that is the situation that many Maine workers find themselves in. A strong and robust Paid Family Medical Leave Act ensures that families have the time they need to care for their sick sister, parents, children, or other family members. All Mainers deserve to know that we will come together to ensure that no worker or family will face economic uncertainty due to a health condition or family caregiving responsibilities. It is time for Maine to create a strong and robust universal paid family medical leave act policy today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us, Lori. Are there any questions for Lori from the commission? Seeing none, we will let you go, Lori. And next up, we have Wayne Kennard, followed by Justin DeWalt and Patty Kidder. Welcome, Wayne. If you want to unmute yourself and go ahead with your testimony.
Okay, I don't see myself, so can you see me? Oh, okay, ma'am, sorry.
We can't see you, but we can hear you. There you are.
Let me rearrange my, good morning, honorable members of the commission. I thank you for allowing me to participate today. My name is Wayne Kennard. I'm a retired human resources professional, having worked across numerous businesses, manufacturing, transportation, construction, healthcare, social services, and Department of Labor. During my career, I have experienced many tragic situations in which people needed time away from work to care for themselves or their loved ones, but didn't have the means to do it. During the early days of the AIDS crisis, one of my employees was dealing with not only ongoing medical challenges, but with prejudice within the company. Other sales staff refused to ride with him on sales calls. Customers could readily tell he had a serious medical condition. And the company president was talking of firing him. I was able to privately arrange short-term, long-term income protection and confidentiality in handling and overseeing his medical claims, as he would be cared for medically and financially. The employee sought legal advice. His lawyer said that my company was extremely unusual and that he had never experienced a company a more compassionate employer. Upon his death, his family thanked me for my intervention. The issue is also very personal to me. My wife died just this year, September 6th of 2021. I cared for her for 2 years, up to the last 2 days of her life. This would have been impossible had I been working. I sought help from Maine Care. We received a denial letter 2 days after she died. We were not rich enough for private pay and not poor enough for public assistance. Caught in the middle, as many working families are. My sister had bladder cancer and needed to have her bladder removed. She was ordered back to work before fully recovering from surgery, causing enormous pain and suffering. Had there been a paid plan in place, she could have exercised her right to medical leave and she would have had a better outcome. We need a system available to all workers and all businesses that allow employees time away from work as needed. People need assurance that they can take time off to heal or to care for others with the ability to return to the job that they held previously. Don't get me wrong, I'm a businessman with the responsibility of caring for employees. I know from experience that when you take care of your employees, they take care of you, making your place of business a great place to work and making your business profitable. I thank you for your time and for my input. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your story. Are there any questions for Mr. Kennard from the commission? Seeing none, we will move on to Justin DeWalt, followed by Patty Kidder, and followed by Callisto Nanan. And I'm sorry if I said your name incorrectly.
I am not seeing Justin. Justin, if you're in the attendee room, could you please raise your hand with the reaction button? Okay, not seeing them. The next name, Representative Cloutier?
Patty Kidder.
Patty Kidder. Okay, moving Patty Kidder over through the internet wormhole.
And then after Patty, we will have Callisto Nanan, followed by Robert Dombrowski. Patty, if you want to unmute yourself, and the floor is yours.
There, I'm trying. Thank you so much. My name is Patty Kidder, and I live in Springvale. It's located in the city of Sanford, Maine. And my family used to own a beautiful marina on Square Pond in Shapley. And I worked there from the time I was a kid. And in 1990, at the age of 31, I got pregnant, and it became a very difficult pregnancy. My doctor told me I needed to rest and eventually put me on bed rest. If Maine had had a paid family medical leave, then I would have rested. But like so many other people, especially self-employed people, I couldn't afford to. I had to keep working. If you don't work when you're self-employed, you do not get paid. Then at 19 and a half weeks, I miscarried. It turned out that my son had very bad, severe birth defects and had a very low chance of surviving, but it really didn't stop it from hurting. My husband's grief was so immense that he had a mental breakdown and he had to be hospitalized. But I still had to work. And truly, I gave birth to my stillborn son at 7:30 in the morning, and I was waiting on my customers at 2:30 that very afternoon. I went on to have two beautiful, healthy daughters, but we knew that any pregnancies I was going to have were going to be risky, and that paid leave while being self-employed wasn't an option. Again, if Maine had had the paid family and medical leave at that time, I would have taken the time I needed, and then I would have been able to go back to work at our family business. But instead, I had to leave my family business. And they eventually had to sell it because I knew I needed a job that had disability insurance. And admittedly, the one I had, it only gave you 6 weeks if you had a vaginal birth, and it only gave you 8 weeks with a C-section. That is not enough. Again, we shouldn't have to make these kinds of decisions when we need to take care of ourselves and our families. And it's not right or practical to make us ask our businesses to take this on. Small businesses can't afford to do that. And it's just going to take our government to do it. That's why I'm so very glad that this commission is going to figure out how Maine can have a paid family medical leave system that all Mainers deserve. And I truly thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Patty, and thank you for sharing that personal story with us. Does anyone have any questions for Patty? Seeing none, thank you again. Next up, we had Callisto Nanan, but I'm not seeing them in the attendee list. So if you are here, could you raise your hand? Okay, not seeing you. Let's move on to Robert Dombrowski. And then after Robert, we have Kate Brogan and Samantha Donnelly. Robert, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you can go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you everyone for having me here today. And thank you for everyone who has spoken beforehand. Some pretty powerful stories. So thank you for sharing. My name is Bobby Dombrowski. I'm a first-time father to a 22-month-old daughter, the primary earner for my family, and currently on week 10 of unpaid family medical leave, acting as a co-caretaker for my mother, who is in the terminal stages of glioblastoma, a malignant brain cancer. We are newly relocated to Waterville, Maine, by way of Philadelphia, having moved to this wonderful state to raise our daughter in proximity to her maternal grandparents, longtime Mainers. My mother, wife, and I bought our home here together, and as we settled into our new house and new intergenerational family structure, we learned the devastating news of my mother's diagnosis. We are now a family with 2 dependents and 0 income, with my mother on home hospice. Our daughter's playroom currently holds a hospital bed, and on nights when hired overnight help is unavailable, my wife and I take turns aiding and assisting my mother with all tasks and functions. While my mother battled with this awful news and progressive symptoms, including seizures, loss of cognition, and limitations to her mobility, I continued working for as long as possible. However, the care demanded of her condition, coupled with toddler parenthood, has made working outside our home totally impossible. I held off taking leave for as long as I could, knowing that once I invoked FMLA, I would have no income. This put us in a very difficult and precarious situation. Thanks to the kindness of friends and supporters, our family is living solely off of the financial assistance of a GoFundMe. It has been humbling and at times humiliating to rely on crowdfunding just to keep our family afloat. We were hesitant and ashamed to do this, but truly saw no other option. While I am thankful for the time off so I can spend more time with my family in our time of crisis, it's harrowing knowing that the only safety net keeping us from falling through the cracks is private social networking. We are so thankful to have access to amazing friends with more resources than us, but know just how incredibly lucky and privileged we are, and are heartbroken and angry to think of other families less fortunate and facing similar obstacles. To our surprise and excitement, my mother has exceeded the expectations of her doctors and is still here with us, though each day we lose a little bit more of her to this incurable disease. My leave is nearly exhausted, so I am currently navigating the prospect of returning to work part-time while still in the role of caretaker so that our family has a reliable income once more. While theoretically and legally, the existing FMLA allows me to take an extended absence without fear of termination, it does not address the omnipresent and overarching financial constraints to do so and to do so indefinitely. I urge you to enact paid family and medical leave so that no other family has to endure this kind of fear and insecurity when experiencing tragedy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bobby, for providing testimony today and for sharing that deeply personal story. Does anyone have any questions for Bobby? Seeing none, thank you again.
Thank you.
And next up, I have Kate Brogan, who I'm not seeing in the attendee list. So if you are here, if you could raise your hand, that would be helpful. Okay, not seeing Kate, we are going to move on to Samantha Donnelly, followed by Jonathan Brown and Kara Kekini. Welcome, Samantha. The floor is yours.
Hi, thanks for having me.
My name is Sam, and I grew up in Millinocket, Maine, and now I live in Wilton, Maine. Love Franklin County for some reason. I'm a USM student. I'm finishing my bachelor's in social work in the spring. When the pandemic started, I found out I was pregnant. So also 4 days after I turned 26 and no longer had health insurance. My work environment at the time was not safe for a pregnant person. They had no pandemic protocols, and I was going into houses that were not questioned if there was any exposure whatsoever. So I was forced to quit for the safety of myself and my unborn child. Me and my husband were living in Colorado at the time, as he's from Colorado. We decided to move back to Maine in July of 2020 because I have family support here, and Maine is it's a nicer state, I'm going to say it. I had family support, and the cost of living is it's just easier. So between February and July, we saved my husband's earnings, and he was an RV technician. He had no benefits, but his pay was decent. We used our savings to move 2,000 miles across the country, and we lived on that for 6 months so that we could both safely quarantine and have our baby without risking all of our lives. We lived extremely frugally and took on quite a bit of debt to get through that time until he got a job as a plumber, and I was able to re-enroll 1 month postpartum back into the University of Southern Maine. And I took out an additional $12,000 in student loans so that we could live again. We both left careers in Colorado that did not provide any benefits whatsoever that would have helped us care for our new son, Remy. Paid family medical leave had been established as a fundamental right. We wouldn't have been on our own. We would have invested our savings into a house, which was our goal. We could have raised our baby without the constant stress of food or housing insecurity. I could have not taken on a substantial student loan debt. We were both working members of society and raising a family, and that should not be a privilege. So instead, we moved 2,000 miles away and emptied our savings account. No, paid family medical leave is a right for every working person in our society to care for ourselves and others. All people deserve to have access to paid family medical leave. Parents, people who are sick or have loved ones who are, and people who have loved ones deployed in the military as well. Our current system only allows people at the top who have the privilege of privatized benefits, and that hurts everyone. This benefit is a right, and if businesses cannot take this on, their business models are not sustainable without the exploitation of workers. Universal paid family and medical leave will help all Mainers. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your testimony, Sam. We also think Maine is a better state. Does anyone have any questions for Sam? Seeing none, thank you again. We will move on to Jonathan Brown, who I'm not seeing in the attendee list. So if you are here, if you could raise your hand, that would be helpful. Okay, not seeing him. We will move on to Kara Kekini. I hope I'm saying that correctly, followed by Andrea Smith and Lindsay Ware. Welcome, Kara. Feel free to take it away.
Hi there, just made it on. Thank you all for being here and for having me. My name is Kara Kaikini. Nice job with the pronunciation. And I live in Freeport. I am here today as a lactation consultant and as the board president of the Maine State Breastfeeding Coalition. The Breastfeeding Coalition supports comprehensive paid family medical leave because paid family leave has been shown to correlate with a significant increase in breastfeeding rates. We've already heard from a few people today about how their breastfeeding experience may have been impacted by this. It also significantly decreases the risk of postpartum depression. Feeding breast milk exclusively for the first 6 months of life is recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics, among many other health organizations. In Maine, there's a 24% decrease in breastfeeding between birth and 8 weeks of life, and a 61% decrease in exclusive breastfeeding by 6 months of age, the age that it's recommended to exclusively provide breast milk. Over 16% of mothers said they didn't even start breastfeeding because they knew they'd have to go back to work or school. Mothers who have a lack of maternity leave are less likely to start breastfeeding due to workplace barriers to expressing and collecting their milk. An additional 17% who started breastfeeding stopped because of returning to work. Workplace lactation policies are not in place for every Maine mother. They may not be given sufficient time or space to pump or have a supportive work environment with coworkers or management who will accommodate their needs to express milk in order to feed their babies or prevent a milk retention infection like mastitis. Workplace accommodations is another structural issue all on its own in need of additional support, but it's absolutely related to the need for a paid leave program that is sufficient in length, adequate in wage replacement, and inclusive of a broad range of family definitions. Returning to work after having a baby is a physically and emotionally trying time. Birthing mothers' bodies are recovering from delivery. Their sleep patterns are altered. They feel exhausted, sore, often inadequate, and stressed. For breastfeeding mothers in particular, they may be having painful challenges themselves, or their babies may be struggling to gain weight or to take a bottle. Returning to work before 12 weeks is unreasonable and unhealthy. They need this time to recover, rest, bond with their babies, and establish infant feeding that aligns with the health organization's recommendations and their own goals. In addition, access to quality infant care is extremely hard to come by. I think we are quite familiar with the affordable childcare crisis here in Maine. And it's an additional stress factor for new families who don't have reasonable paid leave of at least 12 weeks. Mothers also need their partners to have adequate time to be home to care for them. I recently spoke with a new mother who hemorrhaged after her recent delivery. She developed postpartum preeclampsia and has come home to a toddler with significant behavioral challenges. She has said over and over again how grateful she is that her husband is able to be home with her longer than he was with their first. She simply could not care for herself, her toddler, and her newborn safely on her own right now. Mothers often blame themselves when they aren't able to meet their own breastfeeding goals or the recommended duration of exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months and continued breastfeeding for 12 months, despite the fact that they're doing everything they can to meet their goals. The financial, mental, and physical health of Maine's new parents and their babies need the kind of systemic support a comprehensive paid leave program would offer. So thank you for taking the opportunity to thoughtfully consider the establishment of at least 12 weeks of job-protected paid family and medical leave for our state workers. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much for your testimony, Kara. Does anyone on the commission have any questions? All right, seeing none, thanks again. Have a great day. Next up, we have Andrea Smith, followed by Lindsay Ware and Aileen Rosen.
Not sure what's going on. I clicked on promoting her, but it doesn't seem to be moving her through.
I don't see her on the attendee list anymore.
Yeah, she was there and I clicked through. I'm nervous she got lost in the magic wormhole. Yes, no, maybe. Andrea Smith, if you're anywhere in the interwebs void of the Zoom worlds, please let us know. Give her another minute. And if not, we can circle back to her.
Okay. So if we don't have Andrea, then next up we will have Lindsay Ware, followed by Aileen Rosen, followed by Laura Kilmartin.
I'm going to port over Lindsay. And if anyone knows Andrea Smith who's listening or watching, please let them know that if they want to rejoin the Zoom, we will make sure that they get properly promoted to give their testimony.
Thank you, Senator Daughtry. Lindsay, if you want to unmute yourself, you are welcome to join us.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Sorry about my camera, but it sounds like you can hear me.
No worries. The floor is yours.
Ooh. Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, my name is Lindsay Ware, and I work at Planned Parenthood. However, I am speaking on behalf of myself right now, and thank you to the members of the committee. In 2005, my mother was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, and in 2010, I learned that unfortunately, I would have to take time off from work to care for her. The hospice workers were wonderful. I remember how they guided us through that process, and I will be forever grateful to them. We managed my mother's symptoms, primarily intense bone pain, and during that time, there were important end-of-life decisions to be made. And it was clear that I needed to be both physically and emotionally present during that time. I worked for a small employment service agency with a full and part-time staff of about 10 people. I was a full-time employee and eligible for leave under the employer's policy. I was so grateful that when the time came, I had the peace of mind knowing that I could do what was required of me as a family member and still be able to pay my bills and have a job to come back to. And I know from experience how vitally important that time can be. I can't imagine having to go to work and be a functioning employee during that time. And I hope that the commission will support paid family leave for Maine. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for being here, Lindsay, and for sharing your story. Does anyone on the commission have any questions? All right. Thanks again, Lindsay. Next up, we had Aileen Rosen, but I'm not seeing her in the attendee list. So if you are here, could you raise your hand? Okay, not seeing Aileen, we will move on to Laura Kilmartin, followed by Kristen Bullard, followed by Cynthia LeBlanc. So Laura, if you want to unmute yourself, welcome, and you can take it away.
Sorry about that, just took a moment. So first of all, good morning, Senator Daughtry, Representative Cloutier, Senator Rosen, Representative Stearns, and all members of the commission. My name's Laura Kilmartin. I'm a resident of Westbrook, where I was born and grew up, and I'm Chief of Staff to Unum's Chief Operating Officer. And I thank you for the opportunity today to share Unum's perspective as we strive toward the common goal of developing a meaningful paid family and medical leave benefits for all Maine workers. I think that we have seen from the personal stories this morning that that is a common goal that we all share and is necessary. For those of you who are not familiar with Unum, hopefully you are, but if you're not, Unum's had a presence in Maine since 1881. We currently employ nearly 3,000 Mainers, and we're one of the nation's leading providers of disability income protection. We deliver paid medical leave through short-term disability insurance, alongside many other vital employer-sponsored benefits. And in 2020, at the height of the pandemic, Unum handled over 1 million short-term disability claims and leave requests. In June, we released a report that shared the fact that Unum paid over $6.2 billion in short-term disability benefits and helped over 900 companies manage more than 100 leave laws. In addition to providing such benefits, Unum is also one of the largest administrators of leave programs in the country, and we have been since we started providing the service back in 2000. Then and now, we remain committed to the value and necessity of paid leave, and it continues to be our top public policy priority. So we support you and the commission. We support Maine as it takes the important step of developing a paid family and medical leave program that meets the unique demographic and workforce needs of our state. In recent years, we have successfully partnered with states, including New York and Massachusetts, to ensure the most efficient, affordable, and sustainable paid family and medical leave outcomes for workers. And it's due to this experience with other state PFML programs that we believe a public-private partnership will ensure Mainers receive paid family and medical leave protection sooner rather than later. In fact, when New York decided to leverage their existing benefits infrastructure by by choosing to partner with the private sector. Benefits were delivered less than 2 years from the enactment of the legislation. Massachusetts, too, experiences one of the highest participation rates through private plans. More than 1 million workers are covered by private plans, which represents a third of all the covered workers in the state of Massachusetts, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Beyond speed and efficiency, the private sector approach reduces startup and technology expenses. It takes the administrative burden off the shoulders of state government, and it results in a fiscally sustainable funding mechanism that ensures the program's longevity and vitality. So understanding that this protection is long overdue, a robust partnership that allows for private sector participation, we think will help achieve a common objective, ensuring that no Mainer will be left out. Based on our longstanding experience in the employee benefit space, as well as our deep commitment to the value of paid family medical leave and the people of Maine, we're here to help the Commission in any way possible as you carry out this important task. It's our firm belief that paid leave for all truly takes all of us. So I appreciate, and I know that Unum appreciates the opportunity to be here today and welcomes any questions from members of the Commission. And also, if interested, Unum would be more than happy to provide a more detailed presentation of our involvement in existing state paid family and medical leave programs. Thank you for your time this morning, and I appreciate very much the commitment of this Commission.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Does anyone on the Commission have any questions for Laura? All right, seeing none. Next up, we had Kristen Bullard, Cynthia LeBlanc, and Rebecca Wartell. I don't see Kristen or Cynthia in the attendee list. So if you are here, if you could raise your hand.
Not seeing either.
Okay, not seeing either of them. We will move on to Rebecca Wartell, followed by Catherine Rasco, followed by Megan Pistrito. Welcome, Rebecca. If you want to unmute yourself, the floor is yours.
There it is. Hi, my name is Rebecca Wartell. I'm a resident of Gorham and I grew up in Portland. I'm a self-employed massage therapist. And 3 years ago, I was working at a spa hotel in the area and I had to have shoulder surgery. My shoulder was coming dislocated more and more frequently due to my labrum, which is like the band that kind of holds the joint in place, had become virtually non-existent. And it had become dislocated a total of 9 times before I was finally able to have the reparative surgery that I needed to fix it. Each time my shoulder dislocated, one time it even came out dislocated just from sneezing with it at the wrong angle. I lost several days of work, which was already a setback. But in order to have the surgery that I needed to actually repair it, I needed about 3 months to recover before I could actually get back to my very physical job that requires full use of my arms. I was finally able to save up and just barely enough money to scrape by for 3 months. And I was able to have the surgery 3 years ago, and it's been great since. But I ate through every last bit of my savings. Like I managed to just get enough to get by for 3 months, and then I was back to completely square one. And ended up living pretty paycheck to paycheck for a long time afterwards. It was a huge setback and really took up most of my brain space for the better part of a year. I can't even imagine what it would have been like and what would have happened to me if it had been a medical issue that I didn't have that kind of lead time and something that happened suddenly instead of one that I could like plan my leave carefully and save up for a long time to be able to do. Despite the fact that living and working with that injury was not a great experience at the time before I was able to have the surgery. As a massage therapist, I've spent most of my career as a commission-based employee. The income I make is not a salary or even hourly, it's per treatment. And the rest of my non-minimum wage working life has been as a tipped restaurant employee and working in catering. So I've never had a job that neatly translated into having traditional benefits as much as I and everyone benefits from that. But I'm self-employed. I left the hospitality world and started my own massage practice about a month before COVID hit. And so that put a crimp in a bit of a false start due to the pandemic. But now my business is going well, and it's finally going. And my spouse and I are working on starting a family. I'm also worried about what pregnancy and prenatal leave, which other people have talked more in depth about, but what that means for me as a self-employed small business owner, and what it means for my new small business. Though once again, it is something that at least I'm fortunate to have some lead time on and can properly save and plan for. It will be much more difficult than it otherwise could be with a good paid family leave program. I'm a lot more worried about people in similar medical situations to the ones that I've experienced, who are even just a bit more financially precarious than I am. So the things that I really want to ask you today is to make sure to please consider people whose income is not consistent, like people who are commission-based, tipped workers, and per diem workers when designing this program. And also that there be an option for self-employed people. Thank you for your time and thoughtful consideration.
Thanks so much for your testimony, Rebecca, and congrats on starting your business, and best of luck on starting your family. Does anyone have any questions for Rebecca? All right, seeing none, thank you again. We will move on to Catherine Rasco, followed by Megan Pistrito and Heather Martin. Catherine, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate all the work that you're doing for this very important issue. My name is Catherine Rasco, and I live in Cape Elizabeth, and I'm a small business owner. I own Arabica Coffee in Portland, Maine, and I started, the reason I wanted to have my own business, which I started in 1995, was because I wanted to have flexibility when and if I ever had children. The thought of bringing a newborn baby to childcare and returning to a full-time job I just knew that I couldn't do that. So I wanted to have the flexibility with my schedule. And so that was a big reason I started Arabica. So I did have 2 children, and my husband and I ran the business together. So we were able to create flexibility in the schedule. So one of us would work the morning shift, and then I'd bring the baby in and we'd switch off, and the other one would work the afternoon shift. And so it allowed me the flexibility to breastfeed both my children for 3 years, which was just an incredible experience and so important. So the breastfeeding aspect of this, I totally agree with, and it's very challenging. And I can't imagine that I would have done it if I had a full-time job and I had to pump and be away from my baby. It's a totally different experience than just feeding the child in person. So I've also, anyway, so I did want to talk about that, the flexibility that I was able to have as a small business owner, being in charge of my own schedule. And it was very empowering for me. I currently have 12 employees. After COVID, I'm happy I'm still here. And so because my belief in having time, a balance between work and personal lives, I've always allowed flexibility with my employees' schedules. So I had an employee that had a baby, and so I gave her 6 months off, but I didn't pay her because I couldn't afford that. But I did hold her position for her, so she came back to work, and then I allowed flexibility for her schedule, so she could, it's just very challenging, especially if you're a single mother, to work and take care of your children. So that's something that I've done for my staff, but I haven't been able to pay them. Arabica is a very small business, and I couldn't pay someone 6 months' wages. That's just not an option. So I feel very strongly that this should be a government program, so that it's just offering a caring community. I've heard so many stories this morning, and it just boils down to what sort of society do we want to live in? Do we want to be compassionate and support people and their families so that they can care for their own families when they need to and for themselves? Also, the woman that spoke that had the cleaning business really spoke to me, and I felt that myself, where I never take time off. I just work, squeeze in a couple days off here and there, because it's hard to take time off when you own your own business. So I think it would be supportive for business owners as well as their employees. A couple other things I just wanted to bring up was the privacy factor of reasons people need to take time off, and the confidentiality, and who is deciding what qualifies for paid time off and what doesn't, and who gets that knowledge. I think a lot of employees would be hesitant to talk to their employers about some of these very intimate reasons for having to take time off. So I'm a little concerned about that people might not take time off even if it was offered, because what might happen in their jobs. I think someone spoke about someone having AIDS, and that's a really good example of that. And the other thing I wanted to say was I'm a little suspect of having private insurance companies in charge of the program. Just my own experience with health insurance companies is just, they're a nightmare. So I'm very concerned to turn this over to a private insurance company. I would feel more confident if the state ran the program. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for having me. And I really commend all of you for working on this very important policy.
Thank you so much, Catherine. We appreciate your perspective as both a working parent and a small employer. Does anyone have any questions?
I do.
Bonita, go ahead.
So I would just like to ask her one question, and I don't want to put her on the spot. So if she doesn't want to answer, that's perfectly fine as well. I'm just curious if she, as she said, she wants a program, but would she be willing to pay a portion of the benefit? So if it was a employee-employer program, would she be willing to pay? And what amount would she be willing to pay? Would it be 10%, 50%? What would that look like to her?
I think that it should be an employer-employee contribution as well as funds from the state. And small businesses are, we don't make tons of money as a small business. So I don't know the percentage I would be able to afford. I don't know that number. And most of my employees are part-time employees. So I think it's important to cover part-time employees as well as full-time employees, because well, just this last fall, I had 2 employees that had medical issues where they needed to take 2 to 3 weeks off, which I gave them, but I didn't, I wasn't able to pay them 3 weeks worth of pay. So I do support having businesses contribute, but maybe it could be on a graded scale of some sort. Like I know some of these larger companies have resources, and I really think we should support small businesses as much as we can because they really add so much to our communities. So I don't have a direct number for you, but I do agree that businesses should definitely contribute.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Catherine. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you again. Next up, we had Megan Pistrito and Heather Martin. I'm not seeing either of them in the attendee list. So if either of you are here, could you raise your hand? And not seeing them, we will move on to Corvus Crump, and then I will turn the gavel back over to my co-chair, Senator Daughtry. Corvus, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I would like to thank this committee for allowing Mainers to speak today and being willing to entertain this kind of program. It's a kind of program that would be really beneficial to a lot of people in Maine. I want to say that I am a canvasser for the Maine People's Alliance. I live in Vassalboro, Maine, but I'm here of my own accord to speak today about my personal story and my personal experience with with things that a paid family medical leave would be beneficial for. When I was a child, my father had a long-term illness that caused strokes, leading to brain damage, which limited his functioning. This long-term illness eventually killed him. After each stroke, my father would struggle more and more with emotional regulation, mathematics, and basic life skills. I would have to a certain degree, be retaught these skills by the people around him. At the time, my mother was working full-time as an early childhood special educator and part-time as an adjunct professor specializing in special education. As well as a few other odd jobs to keep us afloat. So the responsibility for ensuring my father's well-being fell to me at 9 years old when I had to run to the neighbors when I got home from school in order to dial 911 and rummage through the cabinet to figure out what medications he was taking for the ambulance. I was given a flip phone at a young age in case I ever needed to call the ambulance again. My father, who spent most of his time sleeping, would need his food prepared for him and would need someone else in the car whenever he was going anywhere because he couldn't navigate on his own. This meant that oftentimes any doctor's appointments he had, I or my mother would have to be present for, requiring that mom took sick time or I spend afternoons when I got home from school directing him to the hospital instead of doing homework or after school activities. Even a little leave would have been crucial for my mother, allowing her to care for my father in the weeks directly following his most severe strokes, so he could properly recover from these ordeals and appointments wouldn't have to be scheduled around when my mother had sick time. Such leave would have been crucial had his inability to emotional regulate worsened. There were many nights when my mother would tell me to go to sleep at the neighbors because he was being especially belligerent. I am not the only person I know whose childhood was spent caring for loved ones because their parents were busy working. My mother has her own story of having to come home and care for her mother's broken bones at 5 years old because her father was busy on the job. And a school friend often tells stories of caring for her siblings and stepfather intermittently on evenings getting home from high school. In short, it's not just about the workers of Maine, it's about their families. Their children who will be able to focus on school and on being a kid, their parents, partners, and siblings who will have the resources to recover quicker and better from an illness. I urge this committee to support the broadest and most generous paid family and medical leave system that we can offer in Maine. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Representative Cloutier.
Go ahead, Senator Daughtry, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say thank you. And I was going to ask if there are any questions from the commission. I was jumping in early on our swap time. Seeing none, thank you so much for your time and for your testimony. Up next, we have, says Ellie Lisa on the list, but I'm seeing an Eleanor Lisa. I'm going to make an assumption that this is the same person. After Ellie or Eleanor, please let us know which it is. We have Chloe Herrick, followed by Dusty Homan Sprague. Let's see. Hello.
Hello.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Daughtry, Representative Cloutier, and members of the commission. Thank you so much for all the work you were doing. Honestly, and these stories have been so amazing. I don't know how you all aren't like sobbing. So I'll probably start crying as I read my testimony, but just bear with me. It's what I do. My name is Eleanor Lisa. I am from North Yarmouth, Maine, which is Senator Daughtry's district. I'm the founder of Paid Leave for Me. We're a Facebook group that advocates for paid leave here in Maine, but also nationally, of course. We currently have 354 members. I'm also a mother and a former human resources representative. I'm actually here today to read somebody else's testimony. So I'm going to read a testimony for Katie Coppins. Katie's from Brunswick. She's a teacher and she's a parent. She couldn't be here today because she is working. God bless our teachers. I wanted to read her story in her absence because her story reminds us with emotion what it is like to have a newborn. And it just brings it all back, especially for me. It also reminds us that the standard 6 to 8 weeks is not nearly enough to recover. Personally, I believe 20 weeks is enough. I mean, it's really hard to put a limit on any time when we're talking about ourselves, but I would urge the commission to also take that seriously, the 20 weeks. So I'm going to read her story right now. She titles it, Dear Congress, I think you have forgotten. Dear Congress, last night I slept for a combined total of 5 hours. It was a good night. I write you this letter with my 5-week, 2-day-old daughter cradled in one arm while I type with the other hand. At this moment, my laptop rests on a boppy. If you don't know what a boppy is, you should definitely keep reading this letter. Recently, there has been much media attention about paid maternity leave in the United States. You know the facts. We are the only industrialized nation without paid maternity leave. I have read many opinions on this topic, but I would like to offer a different view. I think you, members of Congress, have simply forgotten what it is like to have a newborn. I have a toddler, and I too forgot what it was like to have a newborn. Last night, I woke up 4 times to nurse my daughter and 2 times just to make sure she was breathing. At one point, her sleep swaddle covered her lower chin, and I had to choose if I should risk waking her up to reposition it. I knew I wouldn't sleep for fear of it moving up and covering her face, so I re-swaddled her. She woke up screaming her high-pitched newborn scream, and I nursed her back to sleep. After weeks of struggle, my daughter and I have finally gotten breastfeeding down. She now has a proper latch, and I am no longer feeling discomfort or bleeding. My daughter has gained 2.5 pounds from the food my body has given her. You may have forgotten how big of a deal that is. My daughter has had a minor case of jaundice, so the day she surpassed her birth weight was a celebration. We cheered when we saw her weight on a scale, and she instinctively started to cry from the loud noise. I forgot how little a newborn is. Sorry. The diapers are so small. and her body is so floppy. She lacks neck control and shows her startle reflex from the smallest sound. She is still unsure of the world around her, but she gets comfort from me. She coos and smiles in her sleep. She is sweet. She is exhausting. She is endearing. She is vulnerable. I am vulnerable too. I have so many hormones flowing through me that I cry from happiness, sadness, and fear. I worry that I worry too much. I worry about something happening to me and my girls growing up without a mom. I worry that my husband and I are becoming co-parents and losing our spark. I worry about my 2.5-year-old daughter adjusting to our new life. I also worry about what it will feel like in 5 days when my paid maternity leave ends. I was one of the lucky ones to have part of my leave paid, but at 6 weeks, I am no longer in that category. My salary stops. My husband and I had to choose if our baby, who spends the majority of her day in my arms and at my breast, is ready to spend 10 hours a day with someone she has never met. She will be one of 4 babies cared for by one person. She will cry for me, and I will not be there. She will have my milk that I have been tirelessly pumping and freezing, but she will not have me. She will learn to find comfort in another person's arms. What will it feel like to be back at work, at the career I've worked so hard for, when every part of me wants to be with my baby? What will it feel like to not be fully present for my job or my family? I will work with too little sleep and come home to 2 children who need me. Neither of them will get enough of me. My husband and I will both feel like we have no time for ourselves or for each other. We will be stressed, we will fight, we will apologize, we will not sleep enough, we will start the day again. This is why I have chosen to give my family 6 more weeks. Work can wait, paychecks can wait. I have this option, but most American women don't. They have to put food on the table and pay the bills. There is no choice. But you, Congress, have a choice in changing our country's view on paid maternity leave. You can help women balance the adjustment between family and work. You may have forgotten what it is like to have a newborn, but you do have a choice, no matter what. Please don't forget that. Sincerely, a mom. And again, I just want to note that this was written by Katie Coppins, and she's a middle school science and English teacher. She lives in Maine with her husband and 2 children.
Thank you, Eleanor, and thank you for sharing her story.
Thank you.
Do I have questions from the? Seeing that, I do want to remind everyone in the waiting room on the chat feature, when comments are coming back and forth on policy perspective, we do want to make sure everyone's comments are being part of the record, so the chat isn't preserved in the same way. So I do urge anyone, if you have additional thoughts after you've testified, we have more ways to be able to get that public input. One, you can always email us through the commission website, which we can place the link again into the chat. We also have 2 surveys that are live now, one for employee and one for employer, soliciting input. I noticed there's been some comments about how to fund the program. And actually the survey is soliciting exactly that type of input. So I just wanted to remind everyone of that, that we want to try to reserve the chat for sort of technical support and making sure that everyone gets their chance to speak, but also want to make sure that everyone knows that there's more ways to, if you think of something, we all have that middle of the night or you're making dinner and something pops up and you think of something. So just want to put that out there. And Commission, any questions for Eleanor? Seeing none. Up next, we have Chloe Herrick. And after Chloe, we have Dusty, and then Gia Drew and Greg Dougal. And Chloe, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you all for having me here this morning. I also want to thank those of you who've already shared some stories. I'm not here to share a personal story per se. I'm here, well, first of all, I'm here, I should say, with the Southern Maine Worker Center, although I speak for myself, but I'm here mostly for 2 reasons. One, is I'm here to show support for paid family medical leave because I would love to have a family someday, and I hope to, to do that. And I think that policies like PFML are the kinds of policies that could really go a long way to making that sort of dream a more feasible sort of reality for me. And I think that there's a lot of Mainers, especially like my generation, for whom that's probably true as well. And the second reason that I'm here is because, well, I think that healthcare and things like paid family medical leave are human rights. I think that we all have the right to have a family, and to if you can't take care of your family, then I don't think you necessarily really have a right to have one in the first place. It seems like those two go hand in hand. And so with that in mind, I have some concerns that I think have already been covered by a lot of people, but one that I really want to cover or focus on is say universality. So for example, I know there's been some discussion about like the definition of family, right? So I worry that depending on exactly how you define family, you might find, or there might be instances of people being sort of left out of the program, or left out of, being able to qualify. I think that certain non-traditional family structures are becoming more and more commonplace in society, and I think that it only makes sense for the law to reflect that whenever possible. And so, and I worry as well that in the process of trying to figure out exactly how we're going to pay for this, that, or the other thing, that people will end up sort of falling through the cracks who might otherwise not have to. Makes sense. And so, I really think that if it's not universal, then, and I feel like universality is like a funny word where like it can mean different things to different people. And when I say universality, I mean everybody, just to be clear, not, you know what I mean? And so anyhow, I think I'll just leave my thoughts there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chloe, and thank you for sharing your thoughts, and thank you for being here today. Do I have any questions from the committee? Not seeing any. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy morning. Up next, I have Dusty, followed by Gia Drew. And hopefully everyone's able to go through the wormhole. Okay, I see Dusty on this side. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Okay, hello, good morning. I'm so happy to join you again. I am Dusty Homan-Sprague. I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Women's Lobby. I joined you last week as a representative of the Maine Paid Leave Coalition, but this week I really wanted to represent the Maine Women's Lobby and the perspective of gender equity and gender justice that we can bring to this conversation. We've heard from some really compelling speakers. I will say I've been in this line of work for a long time, and I am not always so emotionally moved by the stories. And I really, it's been an emotional morning. And so thank you to the members of the commission, and thank you to the folks who have shared their personal stories today. The stories that you've heard are part of, these are not one-offs. These are part of systems and patterns that we have created in our social infrastructure. We've seen during the pandemic, generation-defining job losses among women in Maine and across the country. These have been concentrated among Black, Brown, and Indigenous women. And we know from Maine Department of Labor reports that there's been a gender disparity in job losses every month of the pandemic. One of the key reasons for this, as you've heard, is because women are far more likely to leave the job force due to their essential caregiving responsibilities, either caring for new babies, caring for sick family members, and of course, caring for our own selves. But this is not just an accident. This is about systems that have created a circumstance that leads to 1 in 4 women in the United States taking fewer than 10 days of leave after giving birth, women dropping out of the workforce and losing an average of about $325,000 in lifetime earnings because of caregiving duties, low wage earning women, especially Black, Brown, and Indigenous women, being much less likely to be able to access any kind of paid leave at all, even though they're in essential caregiving roles, which are underpaid and undervalued. These programs are so universally understood to be vital to the health of families and especially the health of women that every other country in the world besides us and Papua New Guinea have created a program. And we know that the key barrier to creating the system is often cited as the burden of upfront costs around establishing the infrastructure, figuring out how to do that program administration. Because once we do establish it, it can often be self-funding once it's created, like we can make a plan for that. And I've worked around state government for many years, and I recognize the reality of establishing a program like this and the challenges that it inspires. But I want to challenge us to think about the costs of inaction, and that's what you've heard about today. Without taking action on this issue, we are already paying the costs, but the costs are externalized, they're hidden, and they're borne out in the lives of often invisible caregivers and women and people of color. Families lose out on essential income, babies lose out on the benefits of breastfeeding. They sometimes are placed in situations which, are unsafe care arrangements. I sat for a long time on the homicide review panel and saw a lot of cases where there simply was no safe care for babies when parents had to go back to work. And sometimes they were harmed and sometimes they died. Our tax dollars invest in public benefits too when families can't make ends meet. When there are systems of paid leave, women are 40% less likely to use public benefits following the birth of a child. So far from being radical or complicated, a system like this is practical and achievable. With significant state surplus projections and federal investment in building human infrastructure right now, we know we have the resources. We simply need the political will. The best estimates are that after startup, a universal 20-week inclusive program can be supported with a payroll tax of less than 0.8. If we split that between employers and employees, as a program should be, it's about 40 cents per $100. That includes a small business exemption and includes an exemption for self-employed folks. So we know we can do it. We also know that the small details of whether it's universal, whether it includes bereavement leave, whether it includes safe leave, these don't substantially add to the cost. So we can create an aspirational program without adding to the cost. What we need to do right now is think expansively about where in state government is a natural host or a fit, how we can ensure that our tax dollar investment supports meaningful public investment in Maine, and how to commit to investing the resources that we know we have. Because until we make this decision, these stories will continue to happen in the lives of almost every Mainer. So thank you for your important work. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be an observer and a participant and to support your decision-making going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from the commission at this time? Seeing none, thank you for being here today. And up next, we have Gia Drew and hopefully Greg Dougal. If Greg Dougal is not available, if anyone knows Greg, feel free to shoot him a text. And up after Greg, we'll have, I think it's Rain Carroll. But up next, we have Gia joining us. I'm always glad there's not wait music or hold music when people are going through the attendee to panelist portion, gotta say. Gia, welcome. The floor is yours.
I think I got this. Let me give this a go. Great. Thank you, Senator Daughtry, Representative Cloutier, and members of the commission to develop a paid family and medical leave benefits program. My name is Gia Drew. I am here representing Equality Maine. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I live in Kennebunkport. I'm also here on behalf of our partners, GLAAD, GLBTQ Legal Advocates and Defenders, Maine Transnet, ACLU Maine, Maine chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and Maine Women's Lobby. All of our organizations support your important work to develop a paid family leave and medical leave program for working Mainers. Only 15% of American workers have access to any sort of paid leave, and fewer than 60% of the workforce has access to unpaid leave under the Family Medical Leave Act. Among those, many don't take the leave because they can't afford unpaid time off from work. This leads to disruption in the workforce, negative public health outcomes, and struggling families and communities and employers. As you consider all the possibilities for designing and implementing a system of paid family and medical leave for Maine, we urge you to consider family in ways that are realistic and inclusive. The government uses the construct of family to make determinations about access to rights, resources, and benefits. Historically, family definitions in law and policy have often failed to meet the needs of families in the United States and have frequently fall short today. The overwhelming majority of households, more than 80%, according to the US Census, depart from the so-called nuclear family model of a married couple and their minor children. LGBTQ individuals and families continue to experience the collateral consequences of narrow family definitions in local, state, and federal policy. Many LGBTQ individuals forge close relationships with friends and informal support networks known as chosen families, often because they face rejection and separation from their biological families. These relationships become paramount when needing to take time off from work to recover from an illness or care for sick loved ones. And more inclusive definitions of family and workplace leave policies would make a significant difference. To that end, attorneys at GLAAD have put together a proposal for an inclusive definition of family that we have attached in our testimony. This definition recognizes that many types of families exist, is comparable to many other states with paid family leave and the federal FMLA, and ties directly to Maine current law by cross-referencing the Maine Parentage Act in determining parent-child relationships, a landmark piece of law that was sponsored by your colleague on this commission, Senator Rosen. We urge you to adopt this definition in any paid leave program that you design in order to ensure families of all kinds have the ability to take care of each other when the need arises. Finally, you may be wondering how other states have dealt with this in their work on paid leave. New Jersey, Connecticut, Oregon, and Colorado have all adopted broad and exclusive family definitions, including chosen family, in their recently adopted paid leave laws. We urge you to uphold Maine's proud legacy of supporting families of all kinds by following their lead. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Gia. Do you have any questions? I have a quick one. Gia, the definition that you referenced does work within the Parentage Act as well as the Maine Human Rights Act.
I would hope so, but I'm not going to answer that without going back and checking for sure.
No worries. I think that's something probably for Colleen or Anna. We just make sure. It's a question the commission we've had, making sure that the definitions we're looking at fit within that framework. So thank you very much for sharing that. Any other? Drew Christopher?
No, Gia, you said that you sent that out to us. Is that right?
I sent it to whoever the contact person was this morning.
Great. So we have that.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you, Christopher. I was just going to say, Colleen is letting us know that all of the additional testimony will come. She'll be sending it through on a packet for us to go through.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for your time, Gia. Up next, still not seeing Greg McDougall, paging Greg McDougall. Also not seeing Rain Carroll. So then up next we have Caitlin Eckhart. Not seeing Caitlin. Jennifer Pepin. Not seeing Jennifer Pepin. Lisa Bandolini. Okay, Lisa, I'm going to promote you and you're going to have to let us know how to pronounce your name. And after Lisa, we have Dylan Holloway. Let's see. Lisa, I'm not sure why it's not putting you through. So one more second, and if not, let's see. Okay, Dylan just is observing. Let me put Dylan back in the waiting room. Okay.
Senator Daughtry, I'm going to allow Lisa to talk if potentially that might help if she logged in with her phone. That might be what we need to do. So I'm going to try that instead of promoting her to a panelist and see if that helps. So
Perfect. Thank you. Lisa, can you hear us at all? Lisa, I think does anyone know, is it *69 to unmute on a phone?
I think that's right.
Yeah, so Lisa, if you can hear us, if you'd like to speak, if you press *69 on your phone, it should allow you to unmute.
Good morning. This is Lisa Vandeli, Standard Insurance Company. I actually didn't submit to provide comments today. We might be providing them by written form, but I'm not sure how I got on the panel as being providing public comment. But I'm an observer and appreciating the whole session. Thank you very much.
Of course, and there's multiple ways to have your voice heard, so please feel free to submit those after today.
Thank you.
Then up next we have Emmer Smith, followed by Ronnie. Let's see, Emmer Smith, there you are. Okay, it says rejoining. Okay, fingers crossed. Aha, Emmer, welcome. The floor is yours. And Emmer, you're on mute.
I'm on mute. I'm realizing that now. I do that all the time. It's Emer, actually. So
Emer.
yes, it's okay. Senator Daughtry, Representative Cloutier, and members of the commission. My name is Emer Smith. I am a resident of Windham, Maine. I am also an infectious disease field epidemiologist with Maine CDC, but I am here of my own accord and speaking on my own behalf for the purposes of this testimony. I am here to add my voice to the impassioned chorus of others in support of paid family and medical leave. So, the first time I used family medical leave, my mother, Cynthia Smith, who you can see there, was dying of cancer. I worked in an entry-level position, and while I had access to use paid leave to help my mother, it was at a very low level and incredibly slow to accrue. It was painful to balance how much time my mother had left while making sure that I had enough time saved up to afford my household expenses. It's hard enough losing a parent without continually having to mentally account for finances and work obligations. The second time I used paid leave was within the past year for the unexpected early arrival of my daughter, Maeve Branna Saoirse Royal. After 28 weeks of a relatively smooth pregnancy, I needed an emergency C-section to save both my and my baby's life. Here she is after her initial birth. Oh, you can't really see it. There we go. All right. I spent the next 6 weeks recuperating, and our little warrior queen spent 12 weeks getting stronger at the Maine Medical Center's NICU and continuing care nursery. When you have a premature infant, you learn to take each moment at a time because nothing is guaranteed. One moment your baby is thriving, and the next nurses are rushing in to revive them because their heart rate decelerated. Everyone dreams of finally taking their baby home, but with a preemie, you don't know how much support your child might need when they leave the hospital. While Maeve was growing stronger, learning to breathe on her own and learning how to eat and do all those baby things that we kind of take for granted, I had two choices. I could use the last 6 weeks of paid family leave while Maeve was while staying in the hospital, or save that time for when she actually came home. And I made the very difficult choice and I returned to work. And I will be absolutely honest, the work that I performed during that time was not my best, and who can blame me when my heart and my mind was not with my job. After 12 weeks at Maine Med, Maeve was discharged home with a nasogastric tube and required tube feedings every 4 hours. My partner and I were staring down a very uncertain future of home visits, therapies, specialist appointments, worrying if our childcare provider would be able to meet her needs, wondering if we'd have to find someone new to care for, which is really impossible in this scenarios that we've had, I'm sure you've heard of. What we'd do if we couldn't find childcare, all while balancing a very exhausting schedule of round-the-clock breast pumping to feed Maeve and newborn care. Man, babies poop a lot. Thankfully, I had the means to take 6 weeks more of unpaid time off. While I was home with her, Maeve began to thrive and she started eating without the tube. She started daycare 12 weeks after her discharge without any complications. And our little NICU warrior queen is now a very happy, healthy, teething 10.5-month-old. So I recognize that my story is one of immense privilege. I have a stable job that provided me with leave so I could recover physically and mentally from the traumas that I and my family endured. I had the financial privilege to cover additional time off unpaid. I never anticipated having a baby show up 2.5 months early, and neither does the current system. Most families do not get to make these choices, and I cannot impress upon you how hard it is to leave your baby or your parents or your loved ones behind because you have to work not knowing if this is the last day that you see them. Paid family and medical leave should support our workers and our workforce during their most vulnerable moments and should apply to anyone regardless of what type of work they do, who they work for, their gender, or who they're providing care for. We cannot pretend that Maine is truly the way life should be without paid leave. And I fervently hope that no one will have to make the choice between work, health, and family the way that I have. But without paid leave, the people of Maine continue to make these choices every single day. I thank you for your time, and I hope that you support a paid leave policy consistent with the core values outlined by the Maine Paid Leave Commission and Coalition. Sorry.
Understood. Thank you so much for your testimony and for sharing your story. And congratulations on your daughter's recovery as well.
Thank you. She's pretty awesome.
And a great name too. Any questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you for taking the time this morning to be with us and for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
Up next, we do have Greg Dougal in the waiting room. So Greg, I will be promoting you to a panelist. And then after that, the names that we still have on the list that I'm not seeing are Ronnie Flannery and Darius Freeman. If there's anyone in the waiting room who has not spoken, who would like to speak, please use the reaction button to raise your hand. Otherwise, Greg, you may be having the last word today. And with that, the floor is yours.
Somehow I don't think I'll get the last word, but thank you, Senator Daughtry. And Senator Daughtry, Representative Cloutier, and members of the Paid FMLA Commission. My name is Greg Dougal, and I am here on behalf of Hospitality Maine and its 1,200 members. As Peter Gore from the Maine State Chamber of Commerce mentioned at your last commission meeting, all discussions about instituting a paid FMLA program in the past in the legislative process have been employee funded. With the discussion changing focus and looking like contributions from employers may be an equal part of the proposed program, the current state of small businesses in the state of Maine should also be taken into consideration while you engage in your deliberations. We appreciate the efforts of the small business owners on the commission and would like to add these comments. We only hope that the commission takes the state of these small businesses into account. We totally understand and appreciate the effect of the pandemic on all workers in our economy, especially hospitality employees, and the spotlight shown on the pandemic has exacerbated that need. But this commission and its deliberations has not really shed light on the issues that small businesses have faced, as well as result of this health emergency. And of course, by small businesses, I mean the folks that own them. Small business owners really are no different than employees in a small state like Maine. The size of an average lodging business in Maine is 13 rooms. There are 1,400 lodging licenses, so that means 700 have 13 rooms or less, hardly a big business. We are happy to see a threshold for numbers of employees being discussed at 10, and we truly hope it is retained. We know members of the commission are aware that the margins in the restaurant industry are very small. Even the best operators find themselves in the 4 to 6% range. Paying FMLA payroll taxes will add another layer of cost and could result in difficulties to meet debt service and the inability to fund much needed upgrades. We ask that when you are deliberating on potentially creating this program, that the considerations of the cost to these small businesses are taken into account and not after the fact, as some have been suggested by some of the members of the commission. It's not only about employees. Employers in Maine are equally as vulnerable in this pandemic-infected economy. Restaurant taxable sales year to date through September in 2021 were only 2% ahead of 2019, with inflation in the 2 years probably totaling about 8% for 2020 and 2021, leaving the restaurant industry obviously in a sizable deficit position. So there is little to no money left at the end of the day, as the lady from Arabica said, with increased expenses. Revenues are low for many reasons: fear of the virus by consumers and staff, labor shortages, inflation, and supply chain issues, the likes we have never seen. I've heard, and I apologize, I had to go in and out of the Zoom, and I really don't like doing that, but I heard a lot of people speak, and they all had very compelling stories to tell. I will say, though, that I've been at this way too long. I'm sure most of you would agree with me on that. But 40 years in the industry, I've seen a lot. And, the most recent situations have been 9/11. The Great Recession was pretty horrible for our industry, at least. And of course, this pandemic, which is, obviously different because it's a health emergency. But I speak to people every day who are crying in the phone because they're about to lose their business. They're having problems making payroll. There's all kinds. Some of that is sometimes their own issue and their own fault, but other times it is directly related to something like this pandemic. And I honestly have not seen anything quite like this ever in the whole time that I've been doing this. So my ask is that you take that into consideration. I heard Mr. Weber's list of what he thinks is appropriate for this program. And to me, it's extreme. And I think that there are ways of probably, and again, this is not my position and I'm not endorsing anything at this point in time, but I'd just like to say that I think there are ways of considering everybody in this process so that nobody, really finds themselves on the outside looking in. So I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has them.
Thank you, Mr. Dougal. Any questions from the commission? I actually have a couple real quick. Oh, Barbara, you go first.
Well, thank you for your testimony. And it certainly is something that I have been thinking about, is how does the employer play a role? Aside from us limiting what size employer has to make a contribution, i.e. those with less than 10, do you have other thoughts? Because we certainly have heard from small businesses that want to play a role, want to have this program, but what is it that needs to happen for your industry?
I honestly can't answer that. I would say that in our membership, you've got people who think this is the worst idea ever, and you've got people who think it's the best idea ever, and everything in between. We've never opposed any effort that Senator Daughtry and others have made to create a paid family leave system that actually the employees contributed to. So obviously, if the employer is contributing to, it's a different game. And really, I would, without asking all of them, which I'd be happy to do, I can't really give that answer, but I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Building off of that, I was actually, the question was going to say, first off, just a reminder for everyone listening and watching that no policy has been set. And I think the joy of this commission, but also I think the challenge for folks, tuning in, is that, we are looking at all the different options, and it's a chance to do our due diligence to really figure out what the price is and the ramifications are on employers of all size and employees of all different businesses. So I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind sort of polling your members a little bit about what Barbara was talking about. And I think the other challenge, and this is for all of us and anyone watching as well, is to please push out the survey that we have for employee and employers that drills down a little bit more. But I was also wondering if it'd be possible, we have some of the Department of Labor statistics on businesses, but I'm wondering if you could get us back just the average size of employees for the businesses, for the members for Hospitality Maine. Is that something that's possible? If not, feel free to tell me.
Well, that was a lot of stuff right there, Senator Daughtry. I can't think that I do have that, to be honest with you, because we don't really collect that information. I think, probably CWRI would be a better source for that information, or I hate to give Commissioner Fortman anything else to do, but, they would have that kind of information probably better and quicker than that. And, again, part of what I was going to say is, we really haven't delved into, maybe because of everything you just said, we've not delved into asking the question about who would like what and what anybody thinks should be paid, if anything at all. And because of what you said, it's hard to do any of that because nobody knows what it is, including you guys. So, I think that we have to leave it in your capable hands to come up with something that you feel would work, and then find out what people think of it. Because again, you're going to have to take it through the legislative process. So just because you come up with a recommendation doesn't mean it won't change again between now and then. But I'm happy to help. I guess, I don't know that we sent the link to the survey out, but if somebody wants to send it to me, I'd be happy to do that.
Definitely. And maybe pop that into the chat. I think that's exactly it, is having this survey link gives us a chance to have a little bit more of those dialogues and completely understand that your membership isn't all on the same page as I feel like most organizations, and all of it, all of us are trying to go through all the different things. So I think it's just my other pitch to get a little bit more feedback. And as the woman from, several women and men were saying earlier, as a fellow small business employee who was literally processing payroll and paid time off this morning, I think everyone on this commission understands the reality of trying to make sure this fits to the needs of small businesses as well as employees. So thank you.
We appreciate your leadership on that, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your time. Do we have, Colleen is popping the link in the chat for the employer survey. And we also do have one for employees as well. Before we close the public testimony portion of this, or public input, is there anyone in the waiting room that has not had a chance to speak who would like to speak? Going once, going twice. I promise I did not work that out with the hound dog. I think she wanted to wait.
That timing was incredible.
That was really good timing. Thanks, Bailey. I think she has a second career as a comic dog. With that, thank you, Mr. Dougal. You are our last piece of testimony today. I'm going to pop you back into the waiting room. With that, we're actually going to be finishing almost on time, which feels like a huge rarity in these kind of things. So I want to thank everyone who came and testified today for sharing some very immensely personal and deeply moving stories. I also, once again, I'm going to be like a broken record on this. Please, for those who are on the commission, please send out these surveys. Like, as we heard, I think this is another chance for us to get a little bit more input, because not everyone can make a Tuesday morning between 9 and noon. So please send these out through your channels. And, the surveys are live. I actually took it myself a day or two ago. It's you can do it pretty quickly. It didn't take me any more than 5 minutes. And I want to see Colleen and Anna, anything else we should be factoring in, or anything we've forgotten?
No, just I didn't know if you wanted to touch base and talk about planning for next steps, if you wanted to think about adding an additional meeting in early January. I know we also would like to follow up with the chairs and also with the members of the actuarial subcommittee at some point soon, if that's a possibility. And other than that, we are compiling the survey responses. Just to give you a quick update, I just checked. We've had 144 responses to the employee survey, and we've had 15 responses for the employer survey. But I have had some trade associations reach out to me and ask for the link. The Retail Association of Maine indicated that they would be sharing that with their employers. And we'll continue to reach out. The survey is going to stay up live on the website at least for another week, I think. And then we'll work to sort of compile the responses and get back to you all so you can review them, hopefully in advance of your next meeting.
We did have a question in the chat asking which survey for self-employed people. I think we had asked them to fill out the employer, and there is an option where you can select 0 employees, indicating that you're self-employed, just to answer that. So for next steps, to sort of give commission members sort of a little heads up about what's around the corner, my co-chair and I do need to check in, as well as the subcommittee on the actuarial study. But what we're hoping is everyone can take everything that they've heard today, and we'll continue to hear from the survey results and sort of stew on it, take it all in. If you have additional questions, pieces of clarification, more information you'd like, you know how to reach us. Please make sure that we can try to get that information in front of you. And then what we're hoping is, one, commission on making sure that you have quality time to bond with your family. We will not be making you meet over the holidays. That just seems cruel and unusual. So I think the next steps, looking at the realities of a calendar in December, would be to try to come back in early January to compile everything we've heard and come up with sort of the a la carte, all the different options that we would like the actuarial study to look at. So put your thinking caps on, be prepared on the next meeting to really dig in and think about which options we'd like to discuss. And I also want to use this chance to remind commission members, this is not all of us saying this is what we need to study. I think what I've heard from all of us is that there's multiple different things that we want to look at. We want to know what the cost is of including X, Y, and Z, what a contribution would look like, what the cost would be of the different potential contribution premiums. But so make sure when you're thinking about it, you don't think it has to be, one way. This is our chance to get really good concrete numbers on what these different options would look like for all of us as a state and as a community to be able to offer. I think that includes most of it. I'll kick it over to my co-chair, Representative Cloutier, to add her thoughts and make sure I haven't forgotten anything as well.
I think you covered it. I just sort of wanted to extend my own deep personal thanks to everyone who shared testimony with us today, and also to my fellow commission members for being attentive for 3 hours and for just sort of sharing this experience with me. It's been really great. And happy holidays to everybody.
Agreed. Any questions from the commission before we wrap up? Seeing none, thank you all so much. I have to say, listening to all this testimony, go hold your loved ones close. And I hope you all get time to be with the people who make you happy, and get some quality rest time and a chance to reset. And I'm so proud to be doing all this work with all of you. And I hope you have a wonderful holiday period, and check your email. We'll be in touch and we'll get the next meeting date on the books. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.